even in direct sunlight, is viewable. We must say the OnePlus 10 Pro 5G passes the design and display tests with flying colors. The camera is another important factor in a phone. It's time to find out how well the OnePlus 10 Pro's cameras fare. The phone houses a camera system developed in collaboration with Hasselblad, a company known as a premium camera maker. It's credited for its high imaging quality and color performance. The phone has 3 rear cameras, a 48 megapixel main camera, a 50 megapixel ultra-wide camera, and an 8 megapixel telephoto camera. The technology and specifications appear to be promising. But does its triple camera system live up to expectations? We put it to different tests, and here are the results. These have been captured in the regular photo mode. And look at how sharp and detailed the close-ups turn out to be. On certain occasions, the autofocus wasn't as fast as we expected. The camera does a good job even in portrait mode. The video stabilization is impressive. And this is a time-lapse taken with the phone. We put it to a slow-mo test as well. It also gets a fisheye mode for clicking wider images. We find this feature a little gimmicky. What we do miss is the macro mode. Though the phone's camera system has many other modes and features that can improve your mobile photography experience. The 32 megapixel front camera is also a good performer. All in all, the OnePlus 10 Pro's camera captures good light, reproduces true-to-life colors, and produces detailed results, even in environments with low light. The cameras get a thumbs up. The OnePlus 10 Pro comes with an Android 12 that is customized with Oxygen OS. It is powered by a Qualcomm Snapdragon 8 Gen 1 chipset. During most of the tasks, including high-intensive ones, the performance is fast and smooth. While there was no lag during the review period, the phone did heat up when used for around an hour on a hot summer day. The OnePlus 10 Pro sports a 5000 mAh battery with 80-watt fast charging. The fully drained battery charges to full in approximately 40 minutes. The battery easily lasts for a day. The OnePlus 10 Pro includes stereo speakers that generate fairly loud audio. The phone is available in 2 colors, volcanic black and emerald forest. The variant with 8GB RAM and 128GB storage is priced at 66,999 rupees, which is nearly $880. The other model with 12GB RAM and 256GB storage is priced at 71,999 rupees, which is about $950. Just like all other OnePlus flagship devices, the OnePlus 10 Pro will receive 3 major Android updates and 4 years of security updates. Now it's time for the most important question. Should you buy it? The OnePlus 10 Pro 5G is one of the best flagship phones on the market. If you are looking for a high-end Android phone, you must consider it.
Cyber frauds are becoming increasingly common. Some miscreants are even exploiting people's desire to bring home a pet. More details in our next report.
Are you planning to bring a puppy home? We're here to tell you that you should not buy one online. We say this for two reasons. Firstly, most online puppies are from puppy mills and are sold by irresponsible dog breeders. Secondly, and this reason is the focus of our story today, puppy scams are becoming more common. Miscreants are exploiting your love for pets. In fact, there has been a significant increase in puppy scams since the COVID-19 pandemic started. According to the Better Business Bureau, in 2021, 35% of all online shopping scams reported to it were pet scams. In the United States, Google sued an alleged puppy scammer who used its services to sell fake pets. This happened after elder advocacy group AARP tipped Google about the scam last September. It all started after a South Carolina resident registered a complaint. He had sent $700 in digital gift cards to an online seller for a basset hound puppy that never arrived. Google is seeking monetary damages and a court order banning the accused user from Cameroon. The lawsuit says the puppy scam harmed Google's reputation and the company had to spend over $75,000 to investigate this case. Last year, another man from a country in Central Africa pleaded guilty to conspiracy to commit wire fraud in a scheme to trick American consumers into paying fee for pets that were never delivered. The victims were induced to make successive payments based on false claims about transportation issues, about the animal needing insurance, and other such matters. If you must buy a pet off the internet and are engaging with a breeder or seller online, do keep these things in mind. If the seller is unwilling to send you photos and videos of the puppy or kitten other than what's advertised on their website, it is a red flag. See the pet in person before paying any money. Also, be wary if the price seems too good to be true and the seller insists on getting money up front. Ask for the company name, number, and street address. See what Google search results pop up. If you can't find anything, the name and address are probably fake. Lastly, if the seller refuses to speak to you on the phone and prefers to handle communication only by emails, it's most likely a scam. Pets are not gifts or disposable or returnable items. Getting one is a lifetime commitment. If possible, adopt a stray or one from a local animal shelter. But if you must buy one, then look for a responsible breeder for whom animal well-being is a top priority.
We know that electrification is a hot trend in the automotive market. Companies around the world are betting big on electric vehicles. Not surprisingly, some exciting electric cars are being showcased at the 2022 New York International Auto Show. Here is more.
Electric vehicles are dominating the 2022 New York International Auto Show. One of the top-performing EVs at the event is the Hyundai Ioniq 5. The vehicle won the World Car of the Year award. It also bagged the World Electric Car and World Car Design trophies at the show. An all-electric updated SUV Chrysler Airflow and the hybrid Alfa Romeo Tonale also caught the attention of visitors. The Tonale has about 30 miles of electric range before switching to gas. It's no secret that companies and buyers are going to electric for a variety of reasons.
Well, one of the big things that's happening is sort of a general move towards electrification. It's better for the planet, that kind of thing. But also there's a real spike in consumer interest in electric cars right now because of rising gas prices. With an average price of over $4 a gallon in the United States right now, at Cox Automotive, we saw a 69% jump in interest in electric cars in March versus January. So people are really looking at their options so they don't have to burn down their entire budgets on gasoline.
Another thing we see at the New York Auto Show is that there are a lot of electric car startups. Each one of them is trying to establish itself as a unique entity and has come up with all sorts of gimmicks.
One of them is Indie EV, and they've got a focus on gaming. They've got a supercomputer under the hood that you can use for gaming purposes. Whether that's really relevant to car shoppers or just a gimmick that entices investors remains to be seen. One thing we have seen, though, is it is very, very hard to build a car and sell it to the public, but it's very, very easy to build a concept and build some hype. So I guess we'll see how many of the car makers here actually go to production.
The ongoing 2022 New York International Auto Show will end on April 24th.
Apple has confirmed that it will start making the iPhone 13 in India. New robots now claim to treat brain disorders. The week gone by was buzzing with a lot of exciting tech developments, and we bring you the most interesting ones in our tech wrap.
Apple has started making the iPhone 13 in India. The phone is being produced at a local plant of Apple's Taiwanese contract manufacturer Foxconn. It's situated in the Indian state of Tamil Nadu. Apple has been shifting some areas of iPhone production from China to other markets, including India. Developing nations like India, Mexico, and Vietnam are becoming increasingly important to contract manufacturers as American brands are trying to diversify production away from China. The iPhone 13 is the fourth model to be produced locally after Apple launched manufacturing operations in India in 2017 with the iPhone SE. Look at this, a floating solar power plant built on a quarry lake in Germany. The photovoltaic plant will be able to provide 3 megawatts of power, which is equivalent to a typical onshore wind turbine. It comes as Germany scrambles to find alternative sources of energy and phase out its reliance on Russian oil and gas in the wake of Moscow's invasion of Ukraine. This renewable technology could help wean Germany off Russian fossil fuels. These floating panels will save 1,100 tons of carbon dioxide emissions a year, compared with the same amount of power produced from fossil fuels. The plant, with 5,800 modules on 360 floating elements, will go into service on the 24th of May. The all-new electric powerboat race series, E1, has begun testing its innovative electric foiling race boat in northern Italy.
E1 Series is a new championship, a championship of electric powerboats. Electric powerboats that we will race all over the world in different areas, in lakes, in rivers, maybe in the sea also in some areas, to transform marine mobility into electric, to decarbonize the water.
The debut season of the E1 World Championship is scheduled to get underway in early 2023. Up to 12 teams and 24 pilots will compete in identical powerboats. Spotify Technology has rebranded its live audio streaming service to Spotify Live. Rolled out in June 2021 as Spotify Green Room, the service will be available as a standalone app and as a live stream function on the main Spotify app. The company has also announced a slew of new content by top artists, as it doubles down on the format at a time when virtual events continue to attract audiences. Amazon workers happen to be a third of US warehouse employees. And you would be shocked to know that in 2021, they suffered 49% of the injuries for the entire warehouse industry. This has been reported by the advocacy group Strategic Organizing Center. It's been found that Amazon workers are twice as likely to be seriously injured than people who work in warehouses for other companies. The report considers serious injuries to be ones where workers either have to take time off to recover or have their workloads reduced. The report also states that Amazon workers take longer to recover from injuries than employees at other companies. According to Amazon employees, it's not the work itself that's particularly dangerous, but rather the grueling pace the company's automated systems demand. What has long been the stuff of science fiction could soon become reality. California-based startup WION Labs is planning to send miniature robots deep inside the human skull to treat brain disorders.
What we're offering is an elegant solution at the source, right? The bionut travels to the cyst, fenestrates it, makes a hole once, twice, multiple times, brought out, and the cyst deflates, meaning the pressure is restored directly at the place where the problem was created.
The firm WION Labs plans its first clinical trials on humans in just 2 years.
What the micro-robotic technology, the bionut, does, it allows you to reach targets you were not able to reach, and reaching them repeatedly in the safest trajectory possible.
Unlike magnetic resonance imaging, or MRI, WION's apparatus is easily transportable. It's also more energy efficient, using 10 to 100 times less electricity. Social media platforms like Instagram and TikTok are flooded with skincare gadgets. One such device is the new body massage gun by TheraBody. Called the TheraFace Pro, this facial massage gun can deliver microcurrent and light therapy with interchangeable magnetic attachments. The device can be used as a deep cleansing tool to remove dirt, oil, and debris. It's priced at $399.
Well, that's all we have for you in this episode of Tech It Out. We will continue to bring you exciting inventions and updates on the latest gadgets. I will be back soon. Until then, keep watching WION World is One. And yes, don't forget to follow us on social media. For now, it's me, Ankit Tuteja, signing off.
It's code red for humanity. The alarm bells are deafening. Wildfires, floods, and hurricanes. Extreme climate events warn of impending doom. Is the world heading towards a climate catastrophe? Watch WION's Climate Tracker weekdays at 12 p.m. GMT, 5:30 p.m. IST.
You don't know how to fix the holes in our ozone layer. You don't know how to bring the salmon back up a dead stream. You don't know how to bring back an animal now extinct. And you can't bring back the forest that once grew where there is now a desert.
You have ignored us in the past and you will ignore us again. We have run out of excuses and we are running out of time.
Show us your faithfulness. Show us your trustworthiness. Show us your honesty. Prove us wrong. We desperately need you to prove us wrong. God help us all if you fail to prove us wrong. God help us.
One trillion species, 7.8 billion humans, 1.9 million species extinct, one planet. Where are we heading? What should we do?
Watch Climate Tracker, only on WION. World is One.
From the world's most volatile region, conflicts over faith and boundaries. Stories of death, destruction, despair, and hope. WION brings you to the heart of the action. Incisive analysis, unrivaled perspective, and exclusive ground reports. Watch West Asia Post every Friday, 8:30 p.m. IST with me, Radi Francis. Only on WION. World is One.
Stay connected with the world through WION. Like the page on Facebook. Follow us on Twitter for new alerts. Instagram for videos and images. And the website for the latest news, views, and analysis. WIOnews.com. World is One.
and welcome, and thanks for tuning in. You're watching WION World is One. My name is Priyanka Sharma, and here are the top stories that we're tracking at this hour. Russia steps up airstrikes on Kyiv, hitting another military factory after 2 weeks of relative calm in the Ukrainian capital. Moscow announces that it is banning the entry to Prime Minister Boris Johnson and several other top UK officials after London imposed sanctions on Russia over its military operation in Ukraine. Meanwhile, Twitter moves to defend itself against Elon Musk's $43 billion hostile takeover bid, announcing a poison pill plan that would make it harder for the billionaire to get a controlling stake. The Colombo Stock Exchange announces a 5-day trading halt after Sri Lanka hiked interest rates and declares a default on its external debt during the traditional New Year holiday. South Africa's flood-ravaged east hit by more rain after the deadliest storm to hit the country in living memory, which killed nearly 400 people and left tens of thousands homeless. And 3 Chinese astronauts returned to Earth after 183 days in space, ending China's longest crewed mission as it continues its quest to become a major space power. Days after being hit by an explosion in the Black Sea, Moscow has now confirmed that its guided missile cruiser Moskva has now sunk. The S-10 crew missile cruiser was a symbol of Russia's military power, leading its naval offensive on Ukraine. The United States Defense Ministry has now backed Ukraine's claims of hitting the Russian warship with anti-cruise missiles. The Pentagon on Friday said that Ukrainian forces have hit the Russian warship with 2 Neptune missiles, causing it to catch fire and sink in the Black Sea. With Press Secretary John Kirby asserting that the damage to the Russian warship will impact their capability in the war in the future, and that Moscow might even change its approach after this incident. Listen in.
They only have 3 in this class. It's a ship that is roughly 600 feet long. It has a crew of almost more than 400, almost 500 sailors on board. And it's basically designed for air defense. That's what this ship is designed to do, not unlike our own cruisers. So it's going to have an impact on their capabilities, certainly in the near term.
Meanwhile, the Central Intelligence Agency's director, William Burns, said that the threat of Russia potentially using nuclear weapons in Ukraine could not be taken lightly. All this during an address recently where Burns spoke of the potential desperation and setbacks faced by the Russian President Vladimir Putin amid the ongoing war in Ukraine, and how he might now change his strategy or stance to shift his focus in his favor.
Given the potential desperation of President Putin and the Russian leadership, given the setbacks that they've faced so far militarily, none of us can take lightly the threat posed by a potential resort to tactical nuclear weapons or low-yield nuclear weapons.
Remember, there is a discrepancy as far as the primary focus and the focus of the war is concerned at this point. As to the cause of the cruiser ship's destruction, Ukraine has now claimed that it hit Moskva with anti-ship cruise missiles, but the Kremlin has denied this claim, saying that the fire of unknown origin detonated the ship's stored ammunition that triggered the explosion at a later stage. And according to exports, parts of the Russian warship is now being towed to a port to assess the incident and the damage caused. Moscow, meanwhile, has warned that Washington over military aid to Ukraine. In the recent updates coming in, Russia has now formally protested the US's ongoing shipment of weapons to Ukraine, sending a diplomatic note to the State Department warning of unpredictable consequences. This comes as the US has now said that it is now preparing to send an additional $800 million of military aid to Ukraine. Now, meanwhile, the Russian Foreign Ministry spokesperson confirmed that Moscow has now sent diplomatic notes to the United States and other nations about supplying weapons to Ukraine. In a statement obtained by the Washington Post, Moscow has now urged on US and its Western allies to stop the militarization of Ukraine and further escalate the conflict. Moving on now with the Russia-Ukraine conflict showing no signs of easing off as of now. Moscow has now said that it will intensify attacks on the Ukrainian capital in particular in response to Kyiv's alleged strikes on Russian soil. Russia's defense ministry warned on Friday that it will scale up its military offensive against any particular targets in Kyiv. All this after Russia accused the Ukrainian capital nationalist regime of attack on the Russian territory. Moscow said that the Ukrainian troops carried out strikes in the Bryansk region, and this in the ongoing war, which alleges that 8 Russian civilians were injured in the ongoing attacks. Kyiv, meanwhile, has denied all of these claims. The Russian troops have now fired missiles at a machine-building plant outside Kyiv, calling it retaliatory. Moscow also claims to have brought down an Ukrainian helicopter that attacked the Russian village of Klimikovo. And the Russian Defense Ministry issued a statement later that 30 Polish mercenaries of a private military company were killed in the Kharkiv region. Listen in.
В городе Мариуполь группировка российских войск и подразделениями Народной милиции Донецкой Республики в результате наступательных действий полностью освобожден от украинских националистов металлургический комбинат имени Ильича. Сегодня ночью высокоточными ракетами большой дальности морского базирования «Калибр» нанесен удар по военному объекту на окраине Киева. В результате удара по Жилянскому машиностроительному заводу «Визор» уничтожены цеха производства и ремонта зенитных ракетных комплексов большой и средней дальности, а также противокорабельных ракет. Количество и масштабы ракетных ударов по объектам в Киеве будут наращиваться в ответ на совершение киевским националистическим режимом любых атак террористического характера или диверсий на российской территории.
In other news, Moscow has now also stepped up its attack on the eastern city of Kharkiv. In the latest coming in, the Russian shelling has now hit a residential area of the Ukrainian city, killing at least 7 people. 34 others are said to have sustained serious injuries. Kharkiv, which is mainly a Russian-speaking city near Ukraine's northeastern border, has been targeted repeatedly by Moscow's troops from the very first week of the invasion. The Russian army has scaled up its attacks by hitting residential areas and public areas in particular, with more than 60 artillery and rocket attacks in one night alone this week.
As France votes to elect a new president, it's Macron versus Le Pen again. Macron-Le Pen advanced to April 24th runoff. Pro-European economic liberal versus far-right nationalist. Will Macron win a second term?
Et donc, parce que...
Or will France choose its first woman leader?
The French president has himself admitted that this election...
WION gets you ground reports from Paris.
French election 2022. WION continuous coverage.
Meanwhile, 24th April is D-Day in France. It is the final round of voting for the presidential election, something that we at WION will be bringing you all the live updates from. But what exactly is happening a week before that? Well, the top two contenders are now debating over one issue in particular, not economy, not jobs, not the rising prices. The Muslim headscarf has taken center stage in campaigning. Far-right contender Marine Le Pen visited southern France, where her promise to ban headscarves wasn't received well, to say the least. In fact, small protests broke out, where some veiled women gathered holding placards. Le Pen also interacted with a few, defending her decision.
Tous des enfants d'immigrés à la première, deuxième, troisième génération. Nous sommes tous des enfants d'immigrés à la première. Dégage, 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 dégage. On n'oublie pas,
Absolument rien. Mon projet n'est pas du tout radical. C'est un projet extrêmement raisonnable. C'est un projet qui donne plus de démocratie pour notre pays. C'est un projet qui est équilibré.
But protesters aren't too convinced with this strategy. They say that Le Pen is targeting a section of the French society and putting the French unity in danger.
Casse-toi, Vaucluse et Antifa, Le Pen, casse-toi.
Je suis pas ravi de la voir, effectivement. C'est pas une personne que j'apprécie. C'est des gens extrémistes qui font. J'espère que la France tombera pas dans ce côté-là extrême. Je préfère que mon pays, j'aime mon pays, je le trouve beau dans sa diversité, dans toutes ces cultures qu'il y a, et je veux pas que ces gens-là gâchent le paysage, quoi.
Now, coming to the incumbent president, Emmanuel Macron, he has no plans of banning headscarves, but he has made it quite clear that he intends to close some mosques. This is something that Macron has actively worked upon while in office as well. Many mosques and Islamic groups have been shut down after investigations have shown that these institutions have links to terror outfits.
Je crois que l'extrême droite, à plusieurs reprises, a contesté certaines valeurs fondamentales, et quand j'entends ce qui a pu être dit par la candidate d'extrême droite sur la manière de réformer la Constitution, sur le retour sur l'abolition de la peine de mort, sur le rapport aux journalistes et leurs récusations, etc., etc., je pense que nous sommes en effet dans une autre catégorie.
The 24th April runoff is expected to be close. During the campaigning, Le Pen is facing much more hate than Macron, but Le Pen's strategy is still working, because the rising hate is being compensated by a rise in popularity. And it seems like she's confident of winning.
Ça me confirme dans l'idée que je peux gagner cette élection présidentielle, car la brutalité qui est exprimée à mon égard est proportionnelle aux chances que j'ai de gagner cette élection.
A big question that is being asked is that why has Islam become a top priority issue during elections in France? Well, the country is home to 5.7 million people who follow Islam. Now, this is 5% of the total population, and half of them are born or naturalized French citizens. So the latest row over headscarves has now sparked anger. They feel that their sacred clothing is being politicized unnecessarily. Now, with the Islamic holy month of Ramzan coinciding with the Jewish Passover, violence has surged in the city of Jerusalem in particular, the Al-Aqsa Mosque becoming the biggest flashpoint after Israeli forces marched into the premises to nab Palestinians in retaliation to attack on them. Here's a report with all the details. Take a look.
Eyewitness video shows chaotic scenes inside Jerusalem's Al-Aqsa Mosque on Friday.
More than 150 Palestinians were wounded there in clashes with Israeli riot police after dawn prayers. The Palestinian Red Crescent said most of the injuries were caused by rubber bullets, stun grenades and beatings with police batons. Israeli police said 3 of their officers were injured in the clashes. Tensions this year have been heightened, in part by Ramadan coinciding with the Jewish celebration of Passover. Al-Aqsa is the 3rd holiest site in Islam, and also revered by Jews as the location of 2 ancient temples. In a statement, Israeli police said that they moved into the mosque to disperse a crowd of Palestinians who had been throwing firecrackers and stones. Hundreds of Palestinians were detained. The Palestinian Authority has condemned the Israeli actions, and neighbouring Jordan called it a flagrant violation. Israeli security forces have been on high alert after a series of deadly Arab street attacks throughout the country over the past 2 weeks.
Let's move on now to other global stories. South Africa happens to be one of the most sought-after countries in Africa. Thousands of people flock to the place from different parts of the continent to settle down in the Rainbow Nation looking for greener pastures. But in the latest couple of months, foreign nationals in particular, especially those without any kind of legal documentation, have been living in fear of being chased back to their country or even being attacked. Take a look.
South Africa's Institute for Security Studies said the Public Violence Monitor has recorded over 200 xenophobic attacks and related incidents over the last 8 years. It said the attacks were mainly fueled by the sentiment that foreign migrants are to be blamed for crime and unemployment, and the urge to make the undocumented people leave the country and push for jobs to be reserved for South Africans.
I'm afraid this fight because it's hard to us. If South Africa, they're going to want us to go back to home, because in Lesotho there's no work, there's no job. It's easy to stay here in South Africa because there is job, nice one, then and salary it was good. So that's why we came here, because of life is better here in South Africa.
The United Nations in South Africa, as well as South Africa's Human Rights Commission, say that the attacks on foreign nationals are worrisome.
Unfortunately, in recent times, we've seen various community groups and individuals rallying around the issue related to the presence of non-nationals within South Africa. It is of major concern to the South African Human Rights Commission, considering that just as recent as last week, we saw the untimely murder and death of Elvis Nyati, a Zimbabwean man who was resident in Diepsloot.
The African Diaspora Forum has called on leaders from all African countries to resolve the problem amicably and to address fears that the situation might worsen.
If South Africa is seen, as is the perception currently, that it is the only developed country within the region, it attracts many people. But we are also aware that now unemployment is about 35% in South Africa. If Zambia is doing well economically, Mozambique, Eswatini, Zimbabwe, Lesotho, there will be no need for young people to flock to South Africa.
These are some of the areas where people from various parts of Africa come and settle down. While some start their own small business, others work at homes as nannies in domestic help, and some put their skills to use as construction workers or drivers. They've come looking for greener pastures in South Africa. But is grass really green on the other side? This is a question only these vulnerable people can answer. This is Carlin Olmo from Johannesburg, South Africa. For WION, World is One.
Meanwhile, if you have an interest in the unknown details of American history and politics, then the new series that we are going to tell you about is just your cup of tea. Starring Viola Davis, Michelle Pfeiffer and Gillian Anderson, the series is expected to make huge waves. Our special report tells you more. Take a look.
History always tells us about the former presidents of the United States, their work, their speeches and policies. But how well do we know the first ladies who have struggles of their own? we are finally going to get a glimpse at some of the big names who made history throughout their time in the White House. Viola Davis, Michelle Pfeiffer and Gillian Anderson are stepping into the shoes of Michelle Obama, Betty Ford and Eleanor Roosevelt respectively. The series does a deep dive into the lives of three prominent First Ladies, detailing their time at the helm of power in Washington, D.C.
Well, I think we're in a day and age I think that we, not really, but understand the role of the presidency, but we don't understand the people behind that, or the women who walk beside those men. And I think that it was important to sort of crack the lid off of that. I think that we do a lot of the work, even if it's just support.
As the series sails through time to explore just how much things have changed, it highlights the fact that the role of the First Lady continues to remain critical.
Well, I think what I found the most surprising about her was her whole story, which not a lot of people know. I think how politically active she was, how she was a real kind of maverick. I mean, she was a pro-choice Republican First Lady who took on a feminist agenda, and she came out and openly spoke about her own breast cancer, which was, again, another very taboo subject at the time.
Oscar-winning star Viola Davis is also the executive producer of The First Lady. In addition to the three leads, the cast also includes O.T. Fegbenley as Barack Obama, Aaron Eckhart as Gerald Ford, Kiefer Sutherland as Franklin D. Roosevelt. The series will start streaming from April 17th. Bureau Report, WION, World is One.
I'll be here for you.
And with that, it's time now for a short break on WION World is One. Don't go too far. Global news updates continue on the other side. Thanks for watching with me, Priyanka Sharma. Stay tuned to WION World is One.
India's neighborhood on the boil. Pakistan and Sri Lanka in turmoil. Pakistan gets a new prime minister after no trust vote. Sri Lanka prime minister stares at a no trust vote.
For the Rajapaksas, these decisions could spell the end of their regime.
And in an act of protest have come together in unity.
Now all eyes would be on this building.
WION tracks the biggest stories from South Asia. Imran takes his fight to the streets. Rajapaksas reach out to protesters in vain. Every detail, all updates, only on WION. It's code red for humanity. The alarm bells are deafening. Wildfires, floods, and hurricanes. Extreme climate events warn of impending doom. Is the world heading towards a climate catastrophe? Watch WION's Climate Tracker, weekdays at 12 p.m. GMT, 5:30 p.m. IST.
You don't know how to fix the holes in our ozone layer. You don't know how to bring the salmon back up a dead stream. You don't know how to bring back an animal now extinct. And you can't bring back the forest that once grew where there is now a desert.
You have ignored us in the past and you will ignore us again. We have run out of excuses and we are running out of time.
Show us your faithfulness. Show us your trustworthiness. Show us your honesty. Prove us wrong. We desperately need you to prove us wrong. God, help us all. If you fail to prove us wrong, God, help us.
One trillion species, 7.8 billion humans, 1.9 million species extinct, one planet. Where are we heading? What should we do? Watch Climate Tracker, only on WION. World is one.
From the world's most volatile region, conflicts over faith and boundaries. Stories of death, destruction, despair, and hope. WION brings you to the heart of the action. Incisive analysis, unrivaled perspective, and exclusive ground reports. Watch West Asia Post every Friday, 8:30 p.m. IST with me, Radi Francis. Only on WION. World is one.
Stay connected with the world through WION. Like the page on Facebook. Follow us on Twitter for new alerts. Instagram for videos and images. And the website for the latest news, views, and analysis. WIOnews.com. $80 million followers on Twitter, holding 9.2% of microblogging sites' common stock, From almost joining the Twitter board to trolling it right away after refusing to join the board of directors. The man who pushes the boundaries of technology is unpredictable. Among the most well-known billionaires, Elon Musk is undoubtedly also the most controversial. Delayed space programs by SpaceX. Overhyped Hyperloop. Fatal cars of Tesla. Misinformation about COVID-19. Refusing to block Russian news sources while committing to help Ukraine in any possible way. You name any controversy or any sector, you will find Elon Musk's name attached to it.
Elon, do you have any comment? Elon, how will you be defending the charge?
There's an old saying, Jack of all trades, master of none. Has the richest person in the world proven this wrong? Or has Musk bitten off more than he can chew? On April 4th, it was reported that Elon Musk has agreed to a deal that would see him appointed to Twitter's board of directors and prohibit him from acquiring more than 14.9% of the company. He tweeted, and we quote, "Looking forward to working with Parag and Twitter board to make significant improvements to Twitter in coming months." The tweet created an uproar on the social networking site and even among the firm's employees. One employee tweeted, "Musk's immediate chilling effect was something that bothered me significantly." Another anonymous employee said, "Some people are dusting off their resumes. I don't want to work for somebody like Musk." But just a few days later, on April 10th, Twitter Chief Executive Officer Parag Agrawal tweeted that Musk has turned down their offer to join the board. He did not, however, disclose the reason for the Tesla chief's rejection. But it was a dramatic U-turn, although in a barrage of tweets, Musk suggested numerous ideas for the firm, ranging from removing advertisements to dropping the letter W in the name. So what does Musk's refusal signify? And why was he offered a place on the board of directors in the first place? With over 80 million followers, Elon Musk is one of Twitter's most influential users. It was in January this year that Musk started steadily buying significant quantities of shares in the company, reaching a 5% stake in the company by mid-March. By April, Musk had bought more than 73 million shares, representing a 9.13% passive stake in the company. At the time, his overall shares were valued at $2.64 billion, making Tesla's chief executive Twitter's biggest shareholder. But by April 15th, he lost his top spot as the American investment company Vanguard Group upped their stake and acquired 82.4 million shares, or a 10.3% stake. However, Musk was 11 days late in publicly declaring he had amassed a large stake in Twitter. According to legal experts, that omission may have earned him $156 million. A 50-year-old law requires that investors notify the U.S. Securities and Exchange Commission when they surpass a 5% stake in a company. Musk reached that benchmark on March 14th. But instead of making it public, he continued to buy stock at the price of around $39 per share, bringing his total stake to 9.2%. After his disclosure, Twitter's share price rose roughly 30% and is now above $50 per share. This time around, he has declined the board seat. By not joining the board, Musk is no longer subject to an agreement to keep his stake below 14.9%.
We personally think he's more likely to increase his stake here over time, potentially act as more of an activist role, looking to potentially influence change, whether it be changing members of the management team over time, or looking to change members of the board. But over time, clearly he didn't want to keep that stake under 15% and be a member of that board, and there has to be a reason in that.
Just days after rejecting a seat on the social media company's board on April 14th, it was reported that Musk has offered to buy Twitter for about $41 billion in cash. Interestingly, Musk, who calls himself a free speech absolutist and has been critical of the microblogging site in the past.
We ultimately believe this turns from a Cinderella story, which would have been if Musk was on the board, to more of a Game of Thrones. I think Musk potentially could go hostile here, continue to increase his stake, maybe partner with the likes of private equity or others. And this could lead to, what could be the ultimate acquisition of Twitter, or some forced strategic changes, including the board. I think it just came down to Musk was not going to play nice in the sandbox with the Twitter board.
Before taking a stake, Musk ran a Twitter poll asking users if they believed Twitter sticks to the principle of free speech. In December, Musk even put out a meme that compared CEO Agrawal with Soviet dictator Joseph Stalin, and showed Jack Dorsey as a clone associate. A day after becoming the largest shareholder, he launched another poll asking users if they wanted an edit button, a long-awaited feature on which Twitter has been working. The Tesla boss also asked users in a poll if Twitter's headquarters should be converted into a homeless shelter, a plan backed by Amazon's founder Jeff Bezos. He even suggested changes to the Twitter Blue Premium subscription feature, including slashing its price, banning ads, and providing a payment option in the cryptocurrency Dogecoin. At one point in time, he even declared he is giving serious thought to building his own social media platform.
Look, I think Twitter board looked at everything from Musk's tweets and basically said it was unacceptable, that he needed to ultimately, his view of Twitter strategically, need to stay within the board. And I think once they recognized that wasn't going to happen, this really became a situation that was untenable. And I think that's something that the Twitter board recognized. And I think his tweets over the weekend really showed that this was starting to go off the rails. And I think it ultimately led to the announcement last night that Twitter and board, as well as Musk, can come to an agreement.
Musk has been regularly mixing in inflammatory and controversial statements about issues or other public figures, with remarks on Twitter. Let's take a look. From revealing the place from where he often carries out his social media business to selling his products on Twitter, Musk knows how to stir up a storm on social media. The Tesla and SpaceX CEO has been outspoken about the coronavirus crisis since the very beginning. In one of his tweets, he said the coronavirus panic was dumb.
If you've ever seen panic buying, this is panic buying at its finest. Everyone is panic buying.
Goodness me! That is a joke. Yeah, look
at it. In another incident, along with Donald Trump, he endorsed the use of chloroquine to cure COVID-19 infection.
We're going to be able to make that drug available almost immediately, and that's where the FDA has been so great. They've gone through the approval process. It's been approved.
The Silicon Valley billionaire entrepreneur also denounced coronavirus lockdowns and stay-at-home orders, calling them fascist. In April 2020, he tweeted, "Free America now and give people their freedom back."
Better off if we go ahead and start.
Last year, during the Taliban's takeover of Kabul, he made headlines again. Musk posted this picture where you can see the Taliban huddling around a table without wearing masks. He tweeted this pic and captioned, "Not one mask, Jesus Christ." He followed this with another tweet. Do they even know about the Delta variant? One of his most controversial tweets was this one. Though he deleted it later, we have retrieved that tweet to show what he thought about the 2018 Tham Luang cave rescue mission. On the 23rd of June 2018, 12 members of a junior football association aged 11 to 16 and their 25-year-old assistant coach entered the cave post their football practice session. Shortly afterwards, heavy rainfall partially flooded the cave system, blocking their way out and trapping them in deep waters. They were stuck for 18 days. British caver Vern Unsworth was chosen for the rescue plan. SpaceX chief executive Elon Musk and engineers designed a kid-sized submarine as a backup plan, but Thai authorities decided not to use his submarine. Musk, in a now-deleted tweet, described Unsworth as a pedo guy. The British caver sought $190 million in damages from the Tesla founder, arguing that the tweet damaged his reputation. But Musk argued that the phrase pedo guy was common in South Africa, where he grew up. His legal team won the case. Musk was born in Pretoria, South Africa. His mother, May Musk, has spoken extensively about escaping domestic abuse and raising 3 children as a single mother. Interestingly, when Musk was a child, his adenoids were removed, because as a child he often gazed into the distance while his parents were speaking to him. This made them believe that he might be deaf, but nothing changed even after the operation. Elon's parents later got divorced. At the age of 10, Musk developed an interest in computing and video games. Soon after, he sold the code for Blastar for $500. As a 19-year-old, Elon Musk moved from South Africa to Canada, hoping to one day emigrate to the United States. He studied at Queen's University in Kingston, Ontario, before being transferred to the University of Pennsylvania on a scholarship. In 1995, he graduated with dual degrees in economics and physics. Musk had to overcome many challenges. He was rejected for a role at Netscape, which led him to start Zip2, the web software company which would go on to make him a millionaire. Musk's personal life has been turbulent too. He has been divorced 3 times and has 7 children. Musk and his girlfriend, Canadian singer Grimes, recently split again after welcoming their second child. Their children are called X-A12 Musk and Exa Dark Siderel Musk, rather unusual names that have raised eyebrows.
Does my voice sound familiar? Who am I? This is your dad speaking.
Last year, Musk revealed that he has Asperger's syndrome on live television.
I'm actually making history tonight as the first person with Asperger's to host SNL.
Many people on social media questioned his claim. Did you know the character of the dangerous tech CEO, Peter Isherwell, in the Oscar-nominated film Don't Look Up, is loosely based on Elon Musk?
Points on you and every decision you have made since 1994, Doctor. I know when you have colon polyps months before your doctor does. You've got 4 or 5 at the moment, actually. They're not concerned, but I'd have a checkup as soon as you can. But more importantly than that, much more importantly than that, I know what you are.
In 2018, the billionaire caused an uproar when he smoked marijuana during a live interview. Comedian Joe Rogan offered Musk a joint, which he accepted. Cannabis is legal for recreational use in California.
I mean, it's legal, right?
It's totally legal.
Okay.
How does that work? Do people get upset at you if you do certain things? There's tobacco and marijuana in there. That's all it is.
The video went viral, and Tesla shares plummeted more than 9%. A meme fest followed, taking the internet by storm. Clearly, Musk was amused. 3 years later, soon after announcing that he was going to be a part of Twitter's board, he tweeted the infamous photo, captioning the meme, "Twitter's next board meeting is gonna be lit." Even though he is not joining the board, his followers can rely on him to stir the pot on Twitter. Have you seen this viral video? The Tesla CEO's awkward dance moves lit up the internet. This is how he celebrated the opening of the company's new Gigafactory in Berlin. Musk threw a huge party to inaugurate the manufacturing plant the size of 100 soccer fields in Texas.
So what we have here is if you put the building on its side, it's taller than the Burj Khalifa. That's to scale. It's 80 feet tall. It's equivalent to 3 pentagons. When a building is measured in units of pentagon, you know it's quite large. And this building is the most advanced car factory that Earth has ever seen.
Those who couldn't get inside the cyber rodeo watched the event from the outside.
I flew out from Riverside, California. It was about a 2.5-hour flight. I came to specifically for this Giga Rodeo trip. It was just a thing a lot of people on Twitter were talking about, and I'm a big fan of the company, shareholder, product owner, Model Y. So I came specifically for the Cybertruck. That's what I wanted to see.
We saw on Twitter and on Where, What, When Austin that there was going to be some kind of cyber rodeo here tonight. Didn't really do our research, just kind of showed up. And we thought that they weren't going to be strict at the doors, but now we're just waiting outside, not really knowing what to do with our Thursday nights.
We also just wanted to check it out. This place is huge, so we wanted to see what it was about.
8 million square feet. We did a little bit of research.
Yeah.
In 2020, Tesla became the world's most valuable car maker, overtaking Japan's Toyota. Musk built his electric car company around the promise that it represented the future of driving. But Tesla's self-driving claims are being reviewed over false promotions. The US Auto Safety Agency has opened dozens of investigations into crashes of Tesla vehicles, and families are suing Tesla over fatal crashes. Elon Musk has also come under heavy criticism for some of his space programs. The billionaire SpaceX CEO is launching satellites into orbit and promising to deliver high-speed broadband internet. Satellite internet is beamed through space at a rate that's reportedly 47% faster than fiber optic cable internet. So, what's the problem? His satellites are taking too much room up there. SpaceX has launched more than 2,000 satellites, and it eventually aims to get nearly 12,000 satellites into low Earth orbit. To put things into perspective, fewer than 9,000 have ever been launched in all of history. In December, China claimed it had 2 close encounters with Starlink satellites. There are growing concerns about satellite mega-constellations littering space with hundreds of dead satellites. Regardless, Musk is now gearing up for his most ambitious project, the colonization of Mars. Elon Musk wears many hats. His projects and interests are never-ending. He's outspoken and brash. He's also used to proving all of his biggest critics wrong. Last year, in a regulatory filing that also appears to celebrate the firm's cryptocurrency investments, Elon Musk crowned himself the techno king of Tesla. The title is bizarre, but so is the billionaire king of controversy.
Welcome to the Cybertruck unveil.
Israel claims to have destroyed a rocket launching site used by the Hamas.
Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu has made no mention of any halt to the offensive.
We at WION have tracked this story from the word go.
WION reports on the latest health threat before the world.
People diagnosed with the coronavirus in Russia may be deported back to their home countries.
The looting started early Saturday.
South Africa is witnessing riots.
Hopping through a Taliban controlled town.
Hours of non-stop live broadcast. The most extensive coverage. Biggest team of reporters on ground.
biggest vaccination drive.
India will have nearly 120 million doses.
We know that our shared planet is changing for the worse.
We need constructive dialogue. It's time, it's time, it's time.
Protests like these are now a frequent
A friendship that has stood the test of time, dehyphenating geopolitical equations and focusing on bilateral issues.
Place where I'm standing will be the site of the opening battle.
As you can see, the reserve forces are getting ready. They're picking up the weapons here.
Ringside, Ukrainian military drills. The Ukraine conflict is intensifying. WION brings you all sides of the story.
The reserve forces are
One of the many
getting
protest
ready.
marches
They're picking up the weapons.
It's code red for humanity. The alarm bells are deafening. Wildfires, floods, and hurricanes. Extreme climate events warn of impending doom. Is the world heading towards a climate catastrophe? Watch WION's Climate Tracker weekdays at 12 p.m. GMT, 5:30 p.m. IST.
You don't know how to fix the holes in our ozone layer. You don't know how to bring the salmon back up a dead stream. You don't know how to bring back an animal now extinct. And you can't bring back the forest that once grew where there is now a desert.
You have ignored us in the past and you will ignore us again. We have run out of excuses and we are running out of time.
Show us your faithfulness. Show us your trustworthiness. Show us your honesty. Prove us wrong. We desperately need you to prove us wrong. God help us all. If you fail to prove us wrong, God help us.
One trillion species. 7.8 billion humans. 1.9 million species extinct. One planet. Where are we heading? What should we do? Watch Climate Tracker, only on WION. World is one. This broadcast on WION is coming to you live and direct from Durban, South Africa.
Warm welcome. You're watching WION World is One with me, Alison LaGrange, coming to you live from Durban, South Africa. Let's take a look at the stories making headlines. Russia steps up airstrikes on military facilities in Kiev a day after warning it will renew its assault on the capital in response to what it says are Ukrainian attacks on Russian soil. Ukrainian President Zelensky says Russia could use nuclear weapons out of frustration at battlefield setbacks, echoing comments by CIA Director William Burns. Former Sri Lankan cricketer Sanath Jayasuriya joins protest outside President Rajapaksa's residence as the island nation's economic crisis deepens. Police, army and volunteer rescuers widen the search for dozens still missing 5 days after the deadliest storm to strike South Africa's coastal city of Durban in living memory as the death toll rises to nearly 400. A tanker carrying 750 tons of diesel fuel from Egypt to Malta sank in the Gulf of Kyiv off Tunisia's southeast coast, sparking a rush to avoid a spill. Climate change activists forced the closure of a main square in central Paris to protest against the environmental programs put forward by France's remaining presidential candidates. Hello and welcome. Let's take a look at our big story this hour. American microblogging company Twitter is pulling out all the stops to shield itself from hostile acquisition bids. In a move to thwart billionaire Elon Musk's hostile takeover bid, the network has announced a poison pill plan. Now, this is to make it harder for the Tesla CEO to get a controlling stake in Twitter. 2 weeks ago, the world's richest person, Elon Musk, announced his over 9% stake in the company, while this week he offered to buy the entire company in a $43 billion cash deal. With 9% stake in Twitter, he was offered a seat on the board, but he turned it down. He is the second largest shareholder after mutual fund giant Vanguard, which holds 10.3% stake. Morgan Stanley is another heavyweight, which has 8.4% stake. BlackRock Inc. owns a 6.5% stake, and State Street Corp., another investment firm, owns 4.5% of Twitter. There is also Saudi Prince Al-Walid bin Talal, who has 5.2% holding in Twitter. Now, the unsolicited bid by Musk to buy the company sent shockwaves through the tech world. However, at this point, Musk's proposed buyout faces several hazards, including a possible rejection. Assembling the money is another challenge, but if consummated, the takeover could have significant impacts on the key social media service. Now, Twitter board has jointly adopted a so-called shareholder rights plan, which is also known as a poison pill. The plan kicks in if an investor buys more than 15% in shares without the directors' agreement. Now, the measure makes it harder for a buyer to build too big of a stake without the board's approval. The plan will allow selling more shares to other shareholders at a discount. This eventually dilutes the holdings of new investors. The poison pill will be in place for 364 days. Experts consider this measure as a potent tool against corporate raiders. However, Twitter also said that the plan does not prevent discussing or even agreeing to an acquisition. Musk has not directly addressed the poison pill, but tweeted that the board would face titanic legal liability if it goes against the interests of shareholders in rejecting his offer. Musk also tweeted that Twitter's shareholders should have a say on his offer. He posted a poll on Twitter in which most users agreed with him. If the bid is rejected, Musk also said to reconsider his position as a Twitter shareholder. Now, apart from Musk, technology-focused private equity firm Thoma Bravo also has informed Twitter that it is exploring the possibility of putting together a bid. Now, it remains possible that a private equity firm could boost Musk's bid by partnering with him. Twitter's board is still assessing Musk's offer. It would put the offer to the company shareholders for a vote if it approves it. Twitter's board is expected to take several more days to assess Musk's bid and draft its response. Tesla's CEO, Elon Musk, is not new to controversies. The world's richest man often uses social media handles to solve business issues. The Tesla CEO has used the microblogging site Twitter many times in the past to communicate with various governments for his business interests. Now, recently, he took to Twitter urging the Indian government to reduce import duties on electric vehicles. In January of 2022, Musk claimed that the EV maker is facing a lot of challenges for its car launch in India. Tesla has been facing regulatory hurdles in the launch of its electric cars in the country for quite some time. Musk appealed to the Indian government last year to slash taxes, while floating the possibility of a local factory, once Tesla starts selling wholly built units from overseas. Though the idea didn't resonate with the Indian government, as the country wants Tesla to put up a factory before showering any SOPs to the motor vehicle company for manufacturing its cars. In addition to that, the Indian government has also asked Starlink, a satellite-based broadband company owned by Elon Musk-led SpaceX, to refund the money received in pre-orders from Indian customers, until the broadband giant acquires its commercial license to operate in the country. Meanwhile, analysts are skeptical of misuse of social media platform Twitter. If Elon Musk becomes the takeover of the microblogging platform, which is subjected to its shareholders' acceptance of Musk's proposal to buy a 100% stake, the Tesla CEO may modify Twitter's rules and regulations and the usage of the social media handles in furthering his business interests. Looking at the way Elon Musk functions, Twitter, under his ownership, may face more compliance issues in many parts of the world. There is also a bigger question over how the social media giant would operate if and when Musk takes over. Now, Twitter last year faced heat from the Indian government for not blocking some tweets that were deemed objectionable. The microblogging platform also failed to meet the timelines set by the regulatory authorities in India. The run-ins with New Delhi created quite a controversy, raising questions over the arbitrary nature in which these new age media companies function. Now, the crisis in Sri Lanka continues to escalate. Each dawn brings in a new set of problems. Power shortages, fuel rationing, food crisis, and now, in the latest episode of Sri Lanka's economic crisis, the stock exchange has been halted for 5 days. The announcement was made by the Colombo Stock Exchange and was put into force as the crisis hit Sri Lanka, hiked interest rates, and declared a default on its external debt. The move comes after the island nation held talks with the International Monetary Fund. The talks were conducted to negotiate a bailout, considering the country has run out of foreign exchange to finance even the most essential imports. The Colombo Stock Exchange All-Share Index has shed over 38% in the past 3 months. Along with this, the Sri Lankan rupee has fallen by more than 35% against the US dollar in the past month. In all, an economy tailspin considering its current foreign debt status, Sri Lanka has sought debt relief from India and China. However, both of the countries have resorted to offer flexible loan options. Now, on the ground, however, the protesters remain adamant. They want President Gotabaya Rajapaksa to resign. Sri Lankans have camped outside the presidential secretariat for almost a week now. Their single-line demand is that the Rajapaksas who govern the country must go.
For years and years, the Rajapaksa government has been taking money from us and really stealing from us, and we are sick and tired of this tyranny because this is there's so much nepotism here. The Prime Minister and President are brothers, and we really want them to go away from here because when they are here, most of us don't see any prosper for our nation, because as long as they're here, they won't be able to fix our economy because they don't want to fix our economy.
We are facing a lot of difficulties. We don't have petrol for our vehicles, no diesel, and no gas for cooking. And the essential items are highly expensive. So the very poor people in this country are suffering like nothing.
And it's not just common citizens, but even prominent personalities are now joining the protest. Sri Lanka's ex-skipper, Senath Jayasuriya, joined the student-led demonstration outside the Sri Lankan President's Secretariat. Economic woes in South Asia continues after Sri Lanka and Pakistan. Now Nepal is facing a crunch in forex reserves. According to Nepal Central Bank, the country is running low on foreign currency reserves, which are needed to import medicines, oil products, cars, and a range of other items. Nepalese Central Bank has now increased interest rates in an attempt to discourage people from buying imports and to help extend the foreign reserves. The country is set to run out of funds in 7 months if things don't start changing.
We have the foreign exchange reserve adequate for the import of almost around 7 months. Compared to the previous level, it has come down, but we can manage it because the number of migrant workers that have been going abroad, that is being increased.
The main source of foreign currency for Nepal is tourism. It also draws from remittances from overseas. Usually, hundreds of thousands of foreign tourists visit Nepal every year. However, this number declined sharply due to the restrictions imposed as a result of the coronavirus pandemic. The good news for Nepal is that the tourists are trickling back, with hundreds of climbers already applying to climb the world's highest peaks, and thousands more trekking on mountain trails. Now, the Finance Ministry said earlier this week that the government is also working to reduce imports of gold and luxury goods, but details of the plan have not yet been made public. The Russia-Ukraine conflict has triggered a food crisis across the globe. India has now stepped in to fill the vacuum to help feed the world's population and has offered to export over 7 million tons of its 107 million tons of wheat production. In the latest, Egypt has now confirmed that it will import wheat from India. Indian Commerce Minister Piyush Goyal confirmed the same. In a tweet, Goyal said, and I quote, "Egypt approves India as a wheat supplier. The Modi government steps in as the world looks for reliable alternate sources for steady food supply." He lauded Indian farmers, saying, "Our farmers have ensured our granaries overflow and we are ready to serve the world." Egyptian Minister of Agriculture Al-Sayed Al-Qasir confirmed that India is the latest in the list of countries that will serve as an alternate source of wheat for Egypt. This after a delegation from the Egyptian Ministry of Agriculture visited India this week, approving Indian wheat after technical studies of the Indian grain. They visited the fields and the grain warehouses, as well as the export warehouses in different Indian states, including Punjab, Madhya Pradesh, and Mumbai. Egypt is the world's biggest wheat importer and gets over 80% of its wheat imports from Russia and Ukraine. Now, according to the Observatory of Economic Complexity, Egypt imports 12 to 13 million tons of wheat per year. While Egypt has been working to diversify its purchases, holding talks with France, Argentina, and the United States, India has been stepping up efforts to provide for the wheat shortage that the war has triggered. In fact, in a video address on the 12th of April, Indian Prime Minister Narendra Modi spoke about exporting supplies to the world, an issue he even raised with the US President during his virtual meet earlier in the week. Prime Minister Modi urged the World Trade Organization to relax its norms.
કાલે હું અમેરિકાના રાષ્ટ્રપતિ જોડે ચર્ચા કરતો હતો તો એમણે પણ કહ્યું કે એક મોટું ધર્મે એમને કહ્યું તમે અમને WTO જો પરવાનગી આપે થોડી રાહત કરી દે કે ભાઈ ભારતમાં જે ભંડાર પડ્યા છે તમે બહાર મોકલી શકો છો તો અમે કાલે મોકલવા તૈયાર છીએ અમે તો ભારતને તો જમાડીએ છીએ અમારા અન્નપૂર્ણા માના આશીર્વાદથી અમારા દેશના ખેડૂતોએ જાણે અગાઉથી દુનિયાની चिंता કરી હોય એમ પણ હવે આ તો દુનિયાના કાયદા કાનૂનમાં રહેવું પડે એટલે ખબર નહીં ક્યારે WTO એના કઈ સુધારા કરશે ને આપણે થશે.
The outrage over the UK government's decision to send asylum seekers to Rwanda is growing. The opposition parties in the UK are calling the deal unworkable and a waste of public money, while refugee groups condemn it as inhumane. Also, the announcement comes at a time when British Prime Minister Boris Johnson is facing intense scrutiny for partying during the COVID lockdown. But the UK says the deal will save countless lives from human trafficking. Migrants have for decades reached Britain illegally. They hide in trucks or ferries. Since the pandemic, they have used small boats arranged by smugglers. Approximately 28,000 people migrated to the UK last year. The new deal aims to identify migrants from Rwanda and send them back to their country. The British government will also contribute around $160 million.
By relocating migrants to Rwanda, investing in their personal development and providing education, employment and other opportunities, we are giving them the chance to make new lives in our country as full members of our communities. This will not only help them, but it will benefit Rwanda and Rwandans and help to advance our own development.
But Rwanda has a very unique history in terms of refugees and resettlement in particular. First and foremost, Rwanda is a safe and secure country with the respect for the rule of law, and clearly a range of institutions that have evolved and developed over time.
The United Nations says that the new plan raises human rights concerns. It has urged London to refrain from transferring asylum seekers and refugees to Rwanda for processing. The agency says people fleeing persecution should not be traded like commodities. Amid criticism, preparations to receive the refugees in Rwanda are in full swing. A hostel building, which has about 50 rooms, has been opened. This hostel will accommodate the asylum seekers who are being sent back.
By relocating migrants to Rwanda, investing in their personal development and providing education, employment and other opportunities, we are giving them the chance to make new lives in our country as full members of our communities. This will not only help them, but it will benefit Rwanda and Rwandans and help to advance our own development.
Shifting focus now, UNESCO Global Geoparks are landscapes of geological significance. They seek to combine sustainable development and conservation by involving local communities. In the latest, UNESCO has announced that it is designating 8 new sites as global geoparks in 7 countries. Our next report gets you the details.
This area in the south of Finland is one among the 8 sites that have been added by UNESCO this year to its list of global geoparks. 46 countries around the world have UNESCO Geoparks. These are pristine landscapes that are recognized for their geological heritage of international significance. The Salpaselkä Global Geopark in Finland is vast and beautiful. It covers an area of 4,506 square kilometers and is home to over 177,000 people.
These sites have all gone through a very long process, starting actually with their own communities, with their local populations. It's a collective effort of local populations with academies, with universities, with local governments, basically with that one and same endeavor just to celebrate their unique geological heritage, as we call it, their unique landscapes, the geological unique sites that they're living on, to celebrate this and to see how they can make an income out of this as well. And very often this is through geotourism and local entrepreneurship.
The geopark is distinct for its stunning lakes and forests. Around 21% of it is covered by water and half by forest. The water is of very high quality and is stored in rock formations created by melting glaciers. It is these aspects that set this landscape apart.
Before you get everyone around the table and then manage to mobilize the funding as well, because there's always a certain, there's actually substantial funding needed if you have to start building geo-trails and visitor centers and parkings. So that can be a long process. And I think the community engagement and making sure that everyone is supporting the idea, that's probably the longest process. And that can be a matter of years. It's rarely a fast process.
The 8 geoparks in 7 countries have now been added to the prestigious UNESCO list. The recognition of a landscape as a UNESCO geopark is far from symbolic. It brings in tourists and more funding for its conservation. The idea is to get the locals involved in the holistic development of the region without affecting the pristine quality of the natural landscape. Bureau Report, WION, World is One.
No end to climate woes as the world faces a spike in temperature. Experts have now made a grim prediction over the future of cacti survival in the future. According to new research, around 60% of the world's cactus species will end up in unideal climates over the coming decades as global warming sets in. This research challenges the long-held assumption that the iconic desert plants will thrive with more heat. By 2070, up to 90% cactus species would be threatened with extinction due to climate change, habitat loss, and other stresses. As per scientist reports in Nature Plants, this is triple the current percentage. Around 1,500 species of cacti spread across North and South America live in different regions with varying climates. Now, these range from sea-level deserts to the high Andes Mountains, from bone-dry ecosystems to humid tropical forests. Biodiversity hotspots rich in species and numbers include central Mexico and the Brazilian Atlantic forest. Researchers led by the Michel Pillet from the University of Arizona examined data on more than 400 species. He also ran models projecting how they would fare at mid-century and beyond under different greenhouse gas emission scenarios. The findings are concerning. Interestingly, cacti is one of the most endangered groups of organisms on the planet, even without climate change, and more than 30% are classified to be at risk of extinction. Under a moderate emission scenario in line with the current policies, global warming will soon add to that threat. The report claims that climate change will become a primary driver of cactus extinction risk, with 60 to 90% of the species being negatively impacted by global warming. And with that, we've come to the end of this broadcast. Don't go away. WION continues on the other side of the short break with all your global news.
Israel claims to have destroyed a rocket launching site used by the Hamas.
Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu has made no mention of any halt to the offensive.
We at WION have tracked this story from the word go.
WION reports on the latest health threat before the world.
People diagnosed with the coronavirus in Russia may be deported back to their home countries.
The looting started early Saturday.
South Africa is witnessing riots.
Hoping through a Taliban patrol now.
Hours of non-stop live broadcast. The most extensive coverage. The biggest team of reporters on ground.
Prime Minister Narendra Modi launched the world's biggest vaccination drive.
India will have nearly 120 million doses.
We know that our shared planet is changing for the worse.
We need constructive dialogue. It's time, it's time, it's time.
Protests like these are now a frequent air.
A friendship that has stood the test of time, dehyphenating geopolitical equations and focusing on bilateral issues.
The place where I'm standing will be the site of the opening battle.
As you can see, the reserve forces are getting ready. They're picking up the weapons here.
Ringside, Ukrainian military drills. The Ukraine conflict is intensifying. WION brings you all sides of the story.
The reserve forces.
Hello and welcome to WION World is One. I'm Radi Francis and this is the West Asia Post. Today our top story sounds like a déjà vu tale. This Ramadan was supposed to be more peaceful. West Asia was marking it without curbs after 2 whole years. But in Palestine, tensions are escalating. Clashes broke out in the West Bank. Several Palestinians have been killed by Israeli forces. Authorities are carrying on more and more raids in the occupied territories after a wave of attacks. So, as the region remains tense, will these tensions escalate into an all-out conflict like last year? We tell you more.
Over 16 Palestinians killed, a wave of attacks in Israel, clashes in the Al-Aqsa compound, and the deadliest wave of violence since 2016. Palestinians and Israelis have witnessed an increase in violence, especially over the past month, and now during Ramzan. Several attackers targeted Israeli cities. Israeli forces stepped up raids. There were shooting and multiple arrests, with Palestinians killed across the West Bank. So far, 4 attacks took place in 4 Israeli cities. The attack killed 14 people. On the other hand, Israel increased its raids on Palestinian towns and villages. This led to daily clashes and arrests. Over 16 Palestinians, including teens, have been killed. The rise in violence is not an isolated phenomenon. Palestinians are slamming Israeli policies in occupied territories and lack of any strong leadership. Protests waged in cities across the West Bank, with shops and businesses shuttered in Ramallah. The latest bloodshed coincides with the holy month of Ramzan. For many, this is a deja vu moment. Last year, violent raids on the Al-Aqsa Mosque compound led to this. A deadly 11-day war between Israel and Hamas in Gaza itself. The conflict killed 200 people and battered the Strip. So, the biggest question now is, could this lead to an all-out war? More Israeli raids means more uptick of violence, like this one at the Al-Aqsa Mosque compound. This is where thousands gather to pray at night. This is where the Israeli police clashes with Palestinians, injuring several of them. Israeli police are said to have entered in force before dawn. Over 59 wounded people were evacuated to hospitals. One of the guards at the site was shot in the eye with a rubber bullet. There is now fears of a new conflict between Hamas and Israel. Hamas has called for a Palestinian general mobilization. They are calling on people to confront Israeli incursions. Tensions have been simmering in the holy city of Jerusalem. This year, the Muslim holy month of Ramzan coincides with both the Jewish celebration of Passover and Easter. In focus is the Al-Aqsa Mosque. This is Islam's third holiest site, a silver-domed mosque inside the 35-acre compound. This complex is referred to as Al-Haram al-Sharif, or the Noble Sanctuary, by Muslims. But the location is also considered holy in Judaism. For Jews, it is known by the name of Temple Mount. Jews believe the compound is where the biblical Jewish temples once stood. Since decades, it has been a flashpoint, the most contested territory in the Israeli-Palestinian conflict. Currently, Jordan acts as the custodian of Al-Aqsa. This was agreed to by both Israel and Jordan in a peace treaty. They decided that the Islamic Trust would have control over matters inside the compound. On the other hand, Israel would control external security. Non-Muslims would be allowed onto the site during visiting hours, but they would not be allowed to pray there. Recent calls by Israeli settler groups have further escalated tensions. They want Jews to raid the Al-Aqsa Mosque compound, asking them to perform the Passover sacrifice there on April 15th. For Palestinians, this is yet another threat. Yet another Israeli attempt to change the holy site's sensitive status quo. Currently, the situation is gradually towards an escalation. The conditions are ripe for an explosion. Will this lead to an all-out war again? Only time will tell. West Asia Bureau, WION, World is One.
From Saudi Arabia to Yemen, Qatar, and much more. We have a lot more lined up for you in this edition of the West Asia Post. But first, as usual, let's take a look at what else is making the headlines across the region.
The World Bank says that the war in Ukraine has multiplied risks for West Asia's poorer countries by raising food and energy prices, and has warned of potential social unrest. A new report has revealed that women and children living in refugee camps in northwest Syria are facing chronic and high levels of violence and depression. Some women in the camps are even forced to engage in what is being termed as survival sex. Lebanon's government has agreed to disburse $15 million to temporarily resolve growing bread shortages in the country, but added that the funds would only last a few weeks. Kuwait is experiencing a severe shortage of expat workers in various sectors, especially professionals and craftsmen. This comes as tens of thousands of workers have left the country. Iran is hoping to host World Cup fans after an agreement with Qatar. Tehran is planning to expand air and sea travel while relaxing visa rules during the upcoming World Cup. Saudi Arabia has set the limit of 1 million Hajj pilgrims this year. Riyadh says Muslims from inside and outside the country will be able to perform the Hajj, providing they are fully vaccinated against COVID-19 and no older than 65.
It is a war that many have forgotten, but it is a war that remains till date. Yemen's exiled president has transferred power to a new council, one that will take part in the talks with the Houthi rebels. Now this comes as the war in Yemen enters its 8th year. With this new development, talks about peace are gathering pace. Now many are asking, will this finally end the war in Yemen? Let's take a look.
The war in Yemen began 7 years ago. In 2015, a Saudi-led coalition intervened in the West Asian nation. They supported the government against the Houthi rebels. The Houthis had already seized parts of the country, including the capital. Thus began a bloody conflict that continued for years. What's happening in Yemen is a tit-for-tat war. Strikes followed by retaliatory strikes and then preemptive strikes. All this while civilians on the ground watch on as firepower raises hopes for a better life. This isn't a battle for Yemen anymore. It's a theatre for the West Asian Cold War. A strip of land where Saudi Arabia and Iran can unleash a battle of egos. The Yemenis are merely pawns in this game. They are expendable. The war-torn nation is one step away from a famine. The war has killed thousands, injured millions, and upended the life of its children, leaving behind a conflict-ridden nation where 80% of the population depends on aid. But now the country could be looking towards some peace. Attempts to end the war appear to be gathering pace. Yemen's exiled president has finally stepped aside, transferring powers to the country's presidential council. President Abd Rabbu Mansour Hadi was in exile in Saudi Arabia. This means this presidential council can now lead talks with the Houthi rebels.
I'm announcing the founding of a leading presidential council to complete the implementation of transitional periods tasks, and I'm transferring all my power to the presidential council in an irrevocable way in accordance to the constitution and the Gulf Initiative's executive mechanism, and putting together a committee that includes all the factions to support the leading presidential council in fulfilling their duties.
The newly created body consists of a president and 7 members. It will lead talks to implement a permanent ceasefire and a political settlement. The announcement follows the start of a 2-month ceasefire and a week of discussions in Saudi Arabia on ending the war. But the Houthis have rejected Hadi's announcement. However, the new government remains optimistic.
The Presidential Leadership Council promises our Yemeni people to put an end to the war and bring justice and comprehensive peace. This council is a peaceful one, but also it's a defensive, powerful council, and it is united too. Its mission is to defend the sovereignty of the homeland and protect its citizens.
The only question that remains is, why would the Houthis take the bait? As for Saudi Arabia's Crown Prince Mohammed bin Salman, this is his personal battle, one that he pulled his country into years ago. As the war enters its 8th year, will the new development bring an end to this conflict? Only time will tell. West Asia Bureau, WION, World is One.
Saudi Arabia is on a spree to mending ties. First it was Turkey, and now it is Lebanon. The Kingdom of Saudi Arabia has sent back its ambassador to Lebanon. Now, this improvement in relations comes just ahead of May's general elections. We bring you the story.
Saudi Arabia seems to be on a spree to mend broken ties. The first nation is Lebanon. Relations between the two nations plunged to an all-time low after Lebanon's former information minister called the Yemen war futile. He even defended the Houthis, who are fighting the Saudi-led coalition. But after Kordaihi's resignation and months of uneasy calm, things do look brighter for the Beirut-Riyadh relationship. Saudi Arabia once invested billions in Lebanon. It bolstered the country's economy and tourism industry. What Saudi Arabia did, the other Gulf states followed. They also poured in money to bolster Lebanon's industries. But the recent conflict meant that all those investments were cut off, not just from Riyadh, but several other Gulf states. Saudi Arabia was concerned about 2 things. 1, the smuggling of illegal pills into the Gulf, and 2, the growing influence of the Hezbollah. So the diplomatic crisis led to a blanket ban. No Lebanese exports were allowed in the kingdom. This further crippled Lebanon's industries that are already reeling from an unprecedented economic crisis. But now there seems to be a significant improvement. Saudi Arabia and Kuwait returned their ambassadors to Beirut, a move that slowly thaws the diplomatic crisis. Saudi ambassador hosted a dinner for Lebanese leaders, while Prime Minister Najib Mikati said he will visit Riyadh this month. However, the timing of Riyadh's rapprochement is not a coincidence. Lebanon will go to polls next month. Beirut has always seen an increase in foreign meddling ahead of polls. This especially as Saudi Arabia's key Sunni ally in Lebanon suspended his political career. Former Prime Minister Saad Hariri announced his exit from politics in January, leaving a massive vacuum in the country's Sunni leadership. But it's not just Lebanon that Riyadh is building bridges with. Turkey-Saudi relations are also staring at a massive reset. Over the last 1 year, Turkey has been on a massive diplomatic push. It is looking to normalize ties with the Gulf nations after years of animosity. But why now? This is because Turkey's economy is crumbling. The lira plunged to an all-time low against the dollar. Prices are soaring across the country, and Erdogan needs investments to save his premiership. Saudi-Turkey ties were marred due to multiple reasons. There was Turkey's support for the Muslim Brotherhood. It's a battle to become the leader of the Muslim world. And the last blow was the murder of journalist Jamal Khashoggi. Erdogan blamed the Saudi government for carrying out the killing, even as the Crown Prince denied any involvement in the murder. This is the same Erdogan government that has now transferred Khashoggi's trial to Riyadh. This is because money speaks louder than morals.
The two countries could reach an agreement, turn the page and enter a new era in their relations, but the crime is the same and it has not changed at all. Even if there's an agreement, it should not have been handled in this way. Governments and states should have a principled approach. That's why the law exists and that's why it is important to resort to legal process.
Erdogan needs investments, and who better than Saudi Arabia? The Turkish president is all set to travel to the kingdom too, a visit that will likely take place during the holy month of Ramzan. For Turkey, this rapprochement is politically logical. More importantly, it is economically profitable, especially ahead of the presidential elections in January 2023. West Asia Bureau, WION, World is One.
Gulf nations are embracing nuclear power. They say it is a move to transition from fossil fuels to cleaner energy. And the nations say it is for peaceful purposes. But why diversify with risky nuclear energy when there are other cheaper and safer alternatives? And could this lead to nuclear proliferation in the region? We bring you the story.
The Gulf is going nuclear. More and more nations are interested in nuclear power. One of them even flicked the switch on a power plant. This is the UAE's Barak nuclear plant, the first of its kind in the Arab world. In Saudi Arabia, a nuclear research reactor is adding to talks. So why is the region embracing nuclear power suddenly? Nuclear power plants generate energy, but they do not add to global warming. Here's how it works. At the core, there is nuclear fission. Atoms split, they release energy. The energy boils water, which helps create steam. This steam then spins a turbine to generate electricity. Everything about this sounds simple, but this is expensive and very risky. Nuclear costs are enormous, but even if the petrodollars can help fund it, one cannot downplay the risks. If history is any indication, nuclear accidents can happen. When they do, they have deadly outcomes, both for humans as well as for the environment. For West Asia, those risks are even more diverse, given the uniqueness of the region. If an accident were to happen, there would be layers of implications. 1, it could disrupt trade and gas revenues. 2, it could contaminate the region's desalination facilities. And 3, could endanger the security of energy in the region. Currently, West Asia has 2 active nuclear power facilities. One is the Bushehr nuclear power plant in Iran, and the other is the Barakah nuclear power plant in the UAE. Bushehr has 1 operational reactor, while the Barakah has 2 operational reactors. This means nuclear power development is still in its early stages here, but the Gulf nations are planning to ramp it up. They are using nuclear power to shift to a cleaner energy and meet their net zero emissions targets. But the same climate change could even damage the plants. Extreme heat waves could damage nuclear plants, leaving behind radiation footprints. Another deterrent could be regional rivalry. Nations can use one nuclear power program to build up the infrastructure, indicating that they could develop the capability for nuclear weapons. Nuclear energy could help with the global energy transition away. They can help countries move away from fossil fuels. But there is an inherent paradox with nuclear power. You don't know whether it will help you or damage you. The case is the same with West Asia. West Asia Bureau, WION, World is One.
Qatar has opened its Olympic Museum with installations and objects showing the history of sports, from chariot racing in ancient times to Formula One in the present. The treasured items in the Doha collection include boxer Muhammad Ali's gloves and driver Michael Schumacher's Ferrari. We tell you more.
Muhammad Ali's boxing gloves,
a Ferrari driven by Michael Schumacher, and a shirt once worn by football legend Pelé. Welcome to Qatar's 321 Olympic and Sports Museum, one of the world's largest sports museums. Its doors were opened this month by sporting celebrities and members of the Qatar royal family. The building is enveloped in 5 rings, referring to the Olympic symbol, of course. The museum has been built around the Khalifa International Stadium, and most famous of the 8 venues which are hosting the World Cup.
This museum specifically looks at both the Olympic and the sports and how the intersection of that from a historical perspective, but also from a Qatar perspective. And you don't find a lot of this in the region. So it was very important for us to make sure that this legacy is set in place and is very understood how we fit in the timeline.
One of the most imposing objects here is this Mesoamerican game hoop. It was used as a goal in a ball game played by people. It was part of the Mayan culture in Mexico in 600 AD. The game was said to be brutal and could sometimes precede rituals. Other installations take you further back in history, to the chariot races of ancient Rome, the first Olympic Games, and archery from the Ottoman era.
So we cover the ancient history of the Olympic Games and we bring it forward into the modern, allowing people to see how that transitioned into the movement that we see today, right? It's not a straight line, so you'll have to come in to see where that gets picked up again. But we do want people to see that this is something that sport is in our past, it's in our present, and it's part of our future.
Some of these items here are from recent history. Many will have special meaning for those who come here, like the boxing gloves used by 18-year-old Muhammad Ali. Jamaica's iconic bobsled from the 1988 Olympics is also here. In total, the museum showcases more than 17,000 pieces of sports memorabilia from across the world. There is even a whole room dedicated to torches, once ignited in previous Olympic Games. The museum also showcases different athletes, playing up gender and racial parity of athletic achievements.
We really wanted to bring something to the table where you could walk in and hopefully, no matter who you are, see a little piece of yourself reflected in one of the galleries.
West Asia Bureau, WION, World is One.
West Asia is not without its share of culture, beauty, and oddities. In our next segment, Curiosities, we bring you some heartwarming stories from this. For you on this episode of the West Asia Post. I will see you next week with a brand new lineup, bringing you more stories from the world's most volatile region. Until then, stay safe. I am Ghadi Francis, coming to you from Lebanon, and you're watching WION, World is One.
It's code red for humanity. The alarm bells are deafening. Wildfires, floods, and hurricanes. Extreme climate events warn of impending doom. Is the world heading towards a climate catastrophe? Watch WION's Climate Tracker weekdays at 12 p.m. GMT, 5:30 p.m. IST.
how to fix the holes in our ozone layer. You don't know how to bring the salmon back up a dead stream. You don't know how to bring back an animal now extinct. And you can't bring back the forest that once grew where there is now a desert.
You have ignored us in the past and you will ignore us again. We have run out of excuses and we are running out of time.
Show us your faithfulness. Show us your trustworthiness. Show us your honesty. Prove us wrong. We desperately need you to prove us wrong. God help us all if you fail to prove us wrong. God help us.
One trillion species, 7.8 billion humans, 1.9 million species extinct, one planet. Where are we heading? What should we do? Watch Climate Tracker, only on WION. World is one.
From the world's most volatile region, conflicts over faith and boundaries. Stories of death, destruction, despair, and hope. WION brings you to the heart of the action. Incisive analysis.
Welcome back and thanks for staying with us. You're watching WION World is One. My name is Priyanka Sharma and here are the top stories that we're tracking at this hour. Take a look.
Ukraine's President Zelensky says that Russia could use nuclear weapons out of frustration over battlefield setbacks, echoing sentiments by the CIA Director William Burns. Meanwhile, Russia steps up airstrikes on the Ukrainian capital Kyiv, hitting another military factory after 2 weeks of relative calm in the Ukrainian capital. In other news, the police, the army and the volunteer rescuers widen the search for the dozen still missing 5 days after the deadliest storm to strike South Africa's coastal city of Durban in living memory, as the death toll now rises to nearly 400. Twitter moves to defend itself against Elon Musk's $43 billion hostile takeover bid, announcing a poison pill plan that would make it harder for the billionaire to get a controlling stake in the social media company. And 3 Chinese astronauts returned to Earth after 183 days in space, ending China's longest crewed mission as it continues its quest to become a major space power. The Russian invasion of Ukraine is currently in its 51st day. And there is now a possible new dimension to this entire conflict. In the latest coming in, the Moscow authorities have now warned that Washington is now arming its weapons against Ukraine. This after the US President Joe Biden announced another $800 million of military assistance to Ukraine, accusing the Biden administration of adding fuel to the war. Moscow has now sent a formal diplomatic note to Washington, D.C. The note, called Démarche, which was sent through normal channels, highlighted how the weapons sent by the United States were having an impact on Kremlin. The note further suggested that Russians were concerned about the new tranche of the sophisticated offensive weaponry that is currently a part of the Biden administration's $800 million package. And now let's tell you about what's happening on the weapons front. That is the weapons that the Biden administration is currently sending. Now this consists of an 18 ISS-MM howitzers, 40,000 artillery rounds, 200 M13 armored personal carriers, 11 M17 helicopters, and 100,000 Switchblade drones, and 500 Javelin anti-armor missiles. According to American officials, these weapons will help the Ukrainian soldiers to fight a different style of battle. In the open areas of the Donbass region in particular, where Russian forces currently appear to have taken a stronghold, and they are currently open to amassing an attack. The 2-month war has severely depleted Kyiv's firepower, but the Ukrainian forces continue to fiercely resist the Russian onslaught, but its armory is depleted, and the Ukrainian president is cognizant of the same. He is currently pressing for an urgent delivery of these ammunitions. Listen in.
Чим більше і чим швидше ми отримаємо всю зброю, яку запросили, тим сильніші будуть наші позиції, тим скоріше буде мир.
The Kremlin has warned that arming Ukraine with weapons can lead to unpredictable consequences, which includes targeting deliveries of the weapons to eastern Ukraine in particular. Now, this has become the recent focus of Russia's twofold month-long invasion of Ukraine. This has further prompted fresh risks of a direct Russia versus NATO confrontation. And there is some substance to the Russian threats. Moscow has now warned repeatedly that any weapon or weapon deliveries to Ukraine would then be legitimate targets. And this is what made NATO rethink its vows to arm Ukraine. And on March 13th, Russia attacked a Ukrainian military base close to the alliance's border, and the Yarov base is currently located 25 kilometers from the Polish border. It was earlier struck by the Russian missiles, killing 35 people and injuring more than 130. But ever since then, Ukraine has managed to thwart the Moscow advances, forcing it to redeploy its troops. But the sinking of the Russian warship Moskva in the Black Sea could lead to an escalation. Ukraine claims that the Russian Navy's warship was hit by its missiles, a claim which has now got the Pentagon thinking and backing. And the Pentagon has now backed the S-10 Crew missile cruiser, which was initially a symbol of Russia's military firepower and was leading its naval offensive when it comes to the Ukrainian territory. Washington claims that the damage to the Russian warship will further impact Moscow's capability in the war. Listen in.
Again, that said, this is a cruiser. They only have 3 in this class. It's a ship that is roughly 600 feet long. It has a crew of almost more than 400, almost 500 sailors on board. And it's basically designed for air defense. That's what this ship is designed to do, not unlike our own cruisers. So it's going to have an impact on their capabilities, certainly in the near term.
But the Ukrainian capital Kyiv now fears a reprisal from Moscow. The Ukraine's President Zelensky says that Russia could in fact use these nuclear weapons out of frustration at the battlefield setbacks. Echoing similar comments by the CIA director, that is William Burns. Listen in. Now, for more details about what's happening in the Ukraine conflict as it stands as of now, for more insights, we are now being joined by Russian affairs expert Fred Weir from Moscow. Fred, my first question to you, what do you think is that Moscow wants at this point? We've heard the Russian President Vladimir Putin talk about the talks coming to a dead end. What, according to you, is the Russian president's intent when it comes to proceeding in this conflict at this point?
I'm not sure why it took them so long to complain about Western arms deliveries. I mean, Ukraine is basically awash in all kinds of Western-made small arms, anti-tank, shoulder-mounted anti-aircraft missiles, and that's been happening from day one of this conflict. And so there must be some reason the Russians have only reacted with that sharp diplomatic note right now. Maybe it's a pro forma thing. But the Russians are preparing to launch a major offensive in the east of Ukraine, one that's been prepared from the beginning. Really, it was what they said from the very beginning was their main objective, that is to crush the Ukrainian army in the Donbass. And it has to be pointed out that most of the Ukrainian army, the biggest portion of the regular army, is concentrated in the Donbass, there in the east. The Russians are in the process right now of trying to create an encirclement of that army to destroy it. And in the course of that, they're also bombing and destroying all the oil refineries, oil storage tanks, railroad junctions. So it's not even clear whether, even if large amounts of American weapons that you listed there start arriving in Ukraine, whether they can be transported to the east where the fighting is about to erupt in a very big way. So I think that this is what everything hinges on, whether the Russians can complete that encirclement and destroy that army. If they do, they'll have the victory that they claim to want. I don't think they any longer are interested in regime change, certainly not interested in occupying all of Ukraine. But they, I think, are really seriously wanting a major victory, and that if they can complete this operation, then perhaps they'll get it.
Absolutely. Now, Fred, you've spoken about the Russian intent for a major victory, so to speak. We've also heard from big claims from the Ukraine leadership. We earlier heard the former Ukrainian President Petro Poroshenko say and appealing at large to the international community for more weapons. If the weapons are delivered, that has been the big case that has been appealed from Ukraine's side to the international community. They want more weapons, more arms to fight the Russian aggression. If that does happen, how does this war proceed in the future?
I don't really know. As I said, it's not clear that even if weapons start, there are huge amounts of weapons already. Ukraine is basically sinking under the weight of all the Western weaponry that is being delivered. And I read some worries in Western countries that they're depleting their own arsenals to such an extent in some Western countries, Britain, the United States, that they may not, that they may be endangering their own national security. That so great is the effort to arm Ukraine. But it's about getting it to the places where the Ukrainian forces will need them. And if the Ukrainian forces in the east are encircled, and the railroads, which is the main way, how do you deliver heavy weapons to an army? Not to mention ammunition, fuel, food, resupply an army of that size, mainly by rail. And the Russians are now serious. They didn't for over a month bomb the railroads. I don't ask me why, but they are doing it seriously now. They're also on the verge of taking the city of Mariupol. That particular conflict is almost finished. I guess it's in its final days. So when that happens, the army that's assaulting Mariupol now, it's mainly not the Russian army, but the Donetsk People's Republic Army. That's 15,000 men who will turn north and attack that Ukrainian army from the south. So we are on the verge of a huge battle, and I don't see how a new surge of American weaponry can actually make a difference.
Right, Fred, just the final question there, and very quickly so. It's been more than a month, well over a month since Russia launched its invasion in Ukraine. We've seen President Putin present a front where he says that he's trying to peddle an agenda. He says that he's trying to wipe out any kind of extremism in the country. A month on, what are Putin's intentions when it comes to Ukraine?
It is so hard to know that. The military objectives were stated pretty clearly from the outset, and the main one being this Donbass liberation thing that they claimed. But political objectives were always murky, couched in terms like denazification, which one took as code for regime change. But they seem to have dropped that. So maybe it is a partitioning of Ukraine, or maybe just to take these Donbass republics and secure them. It's really not clear. And since talks have broken down, we don't even have negotiators laying out their terms as we did earlier. They seemed to be reaching some kind of common ground, at least on some points. All that's in abeyance now. So nobody knows where the political process stands, if there's any at all. And although the West and the United States in particular are heavily engaged in arming Ukraine, they're not doing anything on the diplomatic front at all. They too seem content to let this war drag on.
Absolutely. Fred Weir, thank you so much for all those insights, and thanks for joining us on WION World is One at this hour.
My pleasure.
Let's move on now. It's going to soon be 2 months since the Russian invasion of Ukraine was launched, and ever since the war began, Ukraine has seen unparalleled devastation. Mass graves have now become the norm, as we have been reporting on WION World is One. Russian forces have been pulling back from the major Ukrainian cities, but the residents are now going back to their homes, the villages and the towns that they were forced to leave in the first place. All this due to the intense fighting that ensued. And what they see is complete devastation. Buildings bearing the scars of the Russian shelling. streets littered with smashed tanks. And this is Husarivika, a small village about 150 kilometers southeast of the Kharkiv city. Local residents say that 3 bodies were burnt beyond recognitions, and they have now been recovered from the cellar of one house. The dead bodies have now been taken away from the Ukrainian authorities for post-mortem operations and to look for possible signs of torture. Locals also claim that Russian soldiers lacked rations and that they went from house to house asking for food.
Ну, нічого, так проходили вони по хатах, в основному їсти просили. Хлопці молоді, може, що-небудь винесуть нам, ну, їсти хочемо. Провіряли теж, так ходили по хатах, документи спрашували, провіряли.
And in other news, Ukrainian soldiers in the region have now driven out invading forces using anti-tank weapons and foreign-supplied Javelin missiles. The forces might have retreated, but what is left behind is a dozen destroyed armored vehicles, including tanks with the distinctive Z markings of Russian forces. In the village and surrounding areas, this has been the norm in particular.
На протяжении 20 дней артиллерией и при помощи ПТРК «Стугна», «Корсары», «Фаготы», «Джавелины» обходили противника справа-слева, заходили на выгодные позиции, полили им технику, заставили противника уйти отсюда, он понял, что он в невыгодном положении. И 25-26 марта мы уже зашли полностью в населенный пункт Мусаровка.
Ukraine's authorities claim to have killed at least 20,000 Russian troops and destroyed hundreds of tanks and armored personnel carriers since the invasion began. Ukraine also says that hundreds of Ukrainian civilians have now been killed while under Russian occupation. Russia has constantly denied all these claims. All the details, take a look.
Eyewitness video shows chaotic scenes inside Jerusalem's Al-Aqsa Mosque on Friday. More than 150 Palestinians were wounded there in clashes with Israeli riot police after dawn prayers. The Palestinian Red Crescent said most of the injuries were caused by rubber bullets, stun grenades and beatings with police batons. Israeli police said 3 of their officers were injured in the clashes. Tensions this year have been heightened, in part by Ramadan coinciding with the Jewish celebration of Passover. Al-Aqsa is the 3rd holiest site in Islam, and also revered by Jews as the location of 2 ancient temples. In a statement, Israeli police said that they moved into the mosque to disperse a crowd of Palestinians who had been throwing firecrackers and stones. Hundreds of Palestinians were detained. The Palestinian Authority has condemned the Israeli actions, and neighbouring Jordan called it a flagrant violation. Israeli security forces have been on high alert after a series of deadly Arab street attacks throughout the country over the past 2 weeks.
Moving on to China now, where there are no signs of the COVID outbreak abating as it stands. Shanghai, the financial hub, has now reported a record number of symptomatic COVID cases despite the dynamic clearance approach aimed at stamping out any Omicron variant outbreak. And on April 15th, China reported more than 24,000 new COVID cases, out of which nearly 4,000 were symptomatic and 20,000 were asymptomatic, with infections found in dozens of cities. Beijing has dug in its heels on the zero COVID strategy. It involves stamping out any kind of clusters as they emerge while conducting mass testing and isolating positive cases. This has now resulted in strict movement curbs in Shanghai for around 2 weeks now. While at the center of China's recent outbreak, the city's COVID case tally makes up majority of cases nationwide, and this is despite most of its million residents staying under a strict lockdown. Intercity travel restrictions and a shortage of truck drivers have now shared, or rather snarled, the passage of goods, and this has led to a supply chain crisis. Shanghai authorities have also come under fire for allowing cases to spike and for failing to ensure that the supplies of the fresh food reaches all residents. Due to the pandemic control measures, Taiwanese manufacturer Quanta Computer has also supplied, or rather suspended, production at its Shanghai subsidiary. The plant assembles MacBooks for Apple in particular, and the move has now put the supply of the top-tier Apple laptops at risk. There are also reports of female workers at the plant being transferred to a quarantine camp. Other major cities struck by COVID outbreaks include the city of Xi'an in the northwestern China part, and residents have now been urged to avoid unnecessary trips outside their residential compounds following dozens of COVID-19 infections this month. Companies have been encouraged to have employees work from home or live at their workplace. The Zhengzhou Airport Economic Zone has also announced a 14-day lockdown. It is a central Chinese manufacturing area that includes Apple supplier Foxconn's factory in particular. The lingering restrictions are now seen likely to lead on for delays in shipments that have been wanting by all of us, and this includes big tech companies such as Apple. Meanwhile, economists say that the curbs will weigh in on the country's economic growth rate this year. The growth in the world's second largest economy was already slowing down in the latter half of last year, while analysts now predict that the outbreak would reverse the gains that were made earlier in the year. Now, we've seen the fallout of Western sanctions against Russia, but while the world is concerned about the victims of war, French fashion house Chanel announced in March that it was closing down its stores in Russia to comply with Western and EU sanctions, but Russian influencers have revolted. They're chopping up $7,000 Chanel bags. You have to see this to believe it.
A snip here, a chop there, and a couple of $1,000 go down the drain. While we all shudder and gasp and shriek, these women are cutting away to glory. This is fashion blasphemy.
You have to respect Chanel House.
Let's be clear, this is not a revolt. These are not victims of war. They are self-proclaimed victims of fashion who can't get their hands on their precious Chanel goods. In March, the French house announced that it would shut down its stores in the country and even stop selling its products to people who intend to take them to Russia. We're not sure if the high ranks within the Kremlin were even the least bit perturbed. But these Russian influencers with hundreds of thousands of followers on Instagram are fighting the fashionable fight. They are livid. How dare Chanel stop selling its luxury handbags to its ardent fans? Never mind the war in Europe. Never mind the humanitarian catastrophe. How dare Chanel leave its loyalists hanging? The scissor-wielding self-proclaimed activists are accusing the brand of so-called Russophobia, or fear of Russia. Well, to us it looks like it is these poor bags who should be afraid of these serial choppers. Chanel, meanwhile, in a statement said that we are currently working on improving this approach and we apologize for any misunderstanding this may have caused. Welcoming all our clients, regardless of where they come from, is a priority for Chanel. We're certain Chanel isn't too worried about its bags being in jeopardy, but we couldn't help but notice that one influencer matched her garden shears with her outfit, all the while chopping up her Chanel. So not a complete fashion blasphemy, right?
Bye-bye.
Bureau Report, WION, World is One.
And with that, it's time now for a quick break on WION World is One. Don't go too far. Global news continues on the other side. Thanks for watching.
India's Global Voice, the channel that brings you the biggest stories.
Israel claims to have destroyed a rocket launching site used by the Hamas.
Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu has made no mention of any halt to the offensive.
We at WION have tracked this story from the word go.
WION reports on the latest health threat before the world.
People diagnosed with the coronavirus in Russia may be deported back to their home countries.
The looting started early Saturday.
South Africa is witnessing riots.
Hopping to a Taliban headquarters now.